What's up, guys? I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Double Shot of Steelers. And confirming further, Aaron Rodgers really did sign with the Steelers. This actually happened. Was last night that the contract was completed, pending a physical. And once that's he signed. He's going to be the Steelers quarterback. There are fewer questions today than there were a couple days ago. And at the same time, there are still questions. There's still, a lot to figure out. There's a lot of work ahead. And one of the reasons, speaking retroactively here, that I had been on my, I don't know if you want to call it a tear or a rant or whatever, but for a couple of months now about OTAs and being in there, is that it does make a difference for somebody who's new. It does. And it makes doubly a difference for somebody who's at the quarterback position. What happens now is that you bring in Rodgers and you have him be out there with the rest of the team Tuesday for the start of mandatory minicamp. That's 3 whole days. And it's some organized walkthroughs. It's some actual plays that are utilized. There's nothing remotely physical or anything like that about it. And then from there, you're gone for 5 weeks. If Rodgers wanted to hang around the facility, and I'm being very hypothetical here, and absorb all that he could over the following 5 weeks, he couldn't. Unless he wanted to talk to, some of the pit players in the building next door. Because they vamoosh, they're gone. Even the agents. Everybody. It's a universal 5-week break in the National Football League's world. Now, if they're not concerned about that, that would obviously make me less concerned about it. If he's not concerned about it, that would obviously make me less concerned about it. However, it doesn't lessen the load that's in front of all concerned on the offense. You're going to need to see real relationships formed. You're going to need to see real chemistry activated. You're going to need to see adjustments made on the fly. And don't undersell that aspect of it. Because Arthur Smith knows that he's not just getting a quarterback right now who's going to come in and say, yeah, coach, what do I do next? What do I do, coach? I'm ready for the next play. That last one was really cool. I'm not saying that Mason Rudolph or Will Howard would have done that either. It just felt fun. But you're going to get a guy who's going to be thinking the game in his own way, because he has been around forever and he has won 4 MVPs and he has done a lot of good things in the National Football League. So what you're going to have is a lot of discussions. I really believe this on the field at mandatory minicamp, on the field in Latrobe, where I think you're just going to see pauses in the process. I've seen this actually in Rodgers' persona previously. He'll just stop and say, hang on a second, what was that? What are we doing there? Is that not to criticize it, just to make sure that he fully understands it. Lots and lots of work. And then from there, there's another element to this, and we're going to be getting into this with Chris Halleck today after the coming break. If you look at the 2 missing pieces still on offense, there are 2. One is WR2, the second wide receiver, the spot that would be opposite DK Metcalf, the spot that would take Metcalf's place if he were hurt. That player, I think we can all agree, is not currently on the roster. The other one is TE3 or TE2 or TE1, depending on your perspective, referring, of course, to the tight ends. And from there, I'm referring to Jonnu Smith being available. Arthur Smith has brought Jonnu Smith with him not once, but twice to new locations in the NFL, you don't need to wonder what Arthur would be doing right now behind closed doors on the South Side, knowing that Jonnu Smith is available from the Dolphins via trade, knowing, of course, that the Steelers have the available capital to make that happen. If you bring in that tight end of Jonnu Smith's productivity and dynamism, he was the 4th leading receiver among tight ends in the NFL last season. If you bring him in, is he your 1? Is he your twin? Does Darnell sit? Do you go with 3? Do you even need the second wide receiver now? That's why I said it's one or the other. Well, that's a conversation that if you go ahead and do all of this and bring in Aaron Rodgers and say, this is our year and we're going to go for it, you're not going to not ask. Sorry for the double negative, but you're not. He's sitting there. You're going to say, hey, excuse me, can you offer a little bit of input here? What would you rather have? Another tight end here? Would you rather have somebody else that would be in that, in that family? Would you rather have a wide receiver? What do you think? It doesn't mean you have to go by what he says, but you'd be nuts to not ask. So we have stuff to talk about today. It's going to be more about the around Rodgers than it is necessarily Rodgers himself when we come back right after this momentary break.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
And joined now by Chris Halleck over in our, I was going to say North for Sales. You're not in North for Sales. Why
I am
do
not
I
in
keep
North
thinking
for
you're in
Sales.
North for Sales? I put you in the wrong town, in the wrong township, in the wrong county. You see how that goes?
Yeah.
Every time I mention Jonnu Smith,
Yeah.
I could feel this cringe from you over there.
Yeah.
Why is that? I'm pretty good at feeling tight end cringes. What is that?
I don't feel it happening.
Why?
Well, I mean, first off, when the first inkling of that even came out in a report, it was immediately shot down by probably my most reliable source.
Sure, but Donald Parham got hurt the next day.
Correct. So
For
that's
the year. Changes everything.
That does change everything.
Okay.
But also think about Donald Parham's role and what he was going to be. He was going to be a better receiving version of Michael Pruitt. So do they need to get themselves another tight end that's really, really close to what Pat Freiermuth is? In an offense that's going to run a good amount of 12 personnel and probably more 13 personnel than any other team in the league, they need to have some tight ends, at least another tight end that can contribute in the blocking aspect of the position. And I just don't see Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith both being that guy. Plus, I think Connor Hayward at least has gone on the record in an interview and flat out just said they don't need Jonnu Smith.
Oh, okay. I saw that. Last I checked, Connor Hayward's not being consulted.
He does not
by management.
And then
I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
I know that.
Okay, and he actually got. I read it. He got really indignant about it and everything else. Here it was with Penn Live, by the way. Our good friend Nick Faribaugh.
Yeah.
And it was just, if he comes here, we'll accept it and whatever. So, whoa, what? We'll accept what?
Yeah.
I really like Connor. I really respect him and everything else here. But if you're getting real,
and he plays a different position, really.
He does, but he's in the tight ends room, so he's tight. Yeah. Well, no pun intended with those guys. Okay.
Yeah.
And I get that. they think that they've got something good going there, and the last thing they want to do is see somebody else come in and be TE1 whenever they've already got Pat and everything else here. I get that part, okay? But, the coordinator's the coordinator and the head coach and the GM. And if they say, listen, we can make more things happen with this other tight end than we can with this other wide receiver, we still believe as a football team that we can run deep routes that aren't just DK Metcalf. We believe that Calvin Austin has shown to be capable of doing that. Just little stuff like that, okay? That it doesn't have to be the most, plug and play offense out there. It can be something that's a little bit different. And I'm looking at a guy who had 88 catches last year for a team that barely could move.
Yeah, no, I mean,
okay.
He had a great year, yeah.
Oh, I mean, he went from there were other factors in this, but he went from 50 catches the previous year to 88. He led the Dolphins in receiving, fourth most among all tight ends. Dude can play football. Yeah. And for Arthur to love him the way he does, and he obviously does, that also means he can execute the other aspects of the job. That's, man, I got no problem with that. So I'd love, my goodness, Chris, I'd love to see the Steelers just think outside the box in any capacity.
They should, yes, and you want to see different wrinkles, and trust me, okay, I have to put this into context. I just put up a chalk talk on Aaron Rodgers. There will be a lot more of these throughout the summer, but I spent at least 2 to 3 hours this morning watching Jets film. And I seriously wanted to bash my head against the desk.
And by the way, clarity, he means the other Jets, not the good Jets.
No. New Jersey Jets film. To say Aaron Rodgers was in a bad situation last year is an understatement. They could not run the football. It was awful.
No, at all.
Oh my gosh.
It was with our own eyes. Yeah.
It's terrible. And so anyway, just like the whole reason why I say that is because I like if people think that the Steelers offense was predictable and static and everything last year, go watch some Jets film. It was way worse. It was awful. And I do think that they need to do some things that are, more modern, more motion, more shifts, like stuff that helps throw off defenses a little bit more often. But I still think at the end of the day, even though you can say it was 5 years ago in 2020, they do need another actual wide receiver that can line up on the outside. That is the priority. You can think and dream about Jonnu Smith or Kyle Pitts. And I'm not saying that those would be, if you add either one of those guys to your team, that's a whole nother weapon. That's great.
Sure it is.
But you got to have another guy on the outside too.
Mike
and
could.
That's what I think they're aiming for. Sorry.
Mike says, agree with the A-Rod move. There's Alex Rodriguez is A-Rod. Where does A-Rod come from as it applies to? I mean, he really. Not everybody who's a Rodriguez has to, or Rod Rodgers or whatever else has to have something Rod. Agree with the Aaron Rodgers move or not. Time to get on board. He's a Steelers now. I can't stand this sentiment. I'm sorry, Mike. I love having you here and everything. But this idea that it's time to fall in line, everybody. No, it's not. Let him prove something. If you feel one way about if you feel this was the greatest move, if you feel great about this move, should you have changed your stance on that if he didn't sign? I just never get that. This idea that you're supposed to, here, they did it now. Now it's time for us to listen to whatever it is that they say. No, it isn't. Yeah. They have not been a success for some time now. Okay, they have earned, and I mean earned, their fair share of skepticism, doubt, and criticism. They really have. It's not just he's here now, everybody, let's go, everybody, come on, right behind me, line forms. Come on, get out of here. No thanks.
Yeah, the part for me, at least when it comes to like my own takes and like I have my own personal views, but my personal views don't really matter. It's about what I know about the way Arthur Smith wants to coach offense, what Aaron Rodgers has done previously, and I tried to take all of the information that I can actually put my finger on and then try to deduce what can possibly come of that. Now, We still don't know how it's going to play out. We just don't. Even though Arthur Smith does a lot of the things that was influenced to him by Matt LaFleur, and Rodgers won 2 MVPs playing for Matt LaFleur, just because that sounds like, oh, this should work out more, doesn't mean. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has not played under Arthur Smith. We don't know how it's going to work yet. But we can look at the actual facts and think, well, this on paper looks like a better fit than it was with Russell Wilson. But again, we still don't really know until they actually play football, until they actually start to play the game on the field in the regular season. We just don't know yet.
Denny asks, who would you rather have, Jonnu Smith or Kyle Pitts? I mean, the only one that's actually been connected to the Steelers in any firm way is Jonnu Smith. Even Steelers, that's not. Go ahead.
NFL Network did say, now, again, this is not really breaking news here, but NFL Network did say the Steelers at least called about Kyle Pitts. Again, Omar Khan, if there's a potential player that could be out there, Omar Khan's making a phone call about it. He just is. That's his job.
Yeah, I mean, especially after you lose a tight end who could have been the one who was your second most targeted, not necessarily the most snaps, but the second most targeted tight end on your roster, and Donald Parham. I don't think people realize he went down like made no ripple anywhere. Okay, because he showed up quietly. You know, the signing wasn't a big deal, and everyone thinks of the Steelers' 2 tight ends as Freiermuth and Washington, and that's fine. But Parham might have had the second most pass targets in the Arthur Smith offense, so that's why they would be reasonably and understandably, I'd say, looking around here. Jack Long says it'll be interesting to see the chemistry between Zach Frazier and Aaron Rodgers, 65 snaps a game, especially since it's snapping the football.
They'll figure that out.
They'll figure that out. If you're thinking of the whole Frazier and Justin Fields situation, did you notice that whenever Russell Wilson,
we're also talking about Justin Fields, who did not have a lot of experience taking snaps under center. It's not the same. They got mini camp, they got all a training camp and preseason. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to downplay or dismiss it or whatever. That we've seen the CQ exchange is a really, really big deal. Justin Gall says, with a $10 contribution, it's appreciated. Thanks, Justin. It says, can you remember a team as healthy as the Steelers were at the end of the year last year? Devastating to lose those 5 games being that healthy. You know, I think there are different ways of describing what's healthy and not. If you mean they're out there and they've got a helmet, yes.
Yeah.
If you had any idea what TJ Watt was going through from the Philadelphia game onward, you would not be calling him healthy. Okay, TJ was in pretty rough shape, and he was still giving it, obviously, everything that he's got. That's what TJ is. But yeah, I don't know if there's that they were that healthy. I don't know. You have something on this one, Chris?
Yeah,
they were back. They were beaten up. The schedule did hurt them. The physical nature of the teams that they were playing, the Philadelphias, the Baltimores, and so forth, and Kansas City for that matter.
Oh yeah.
We don't think of them that way because you just think of them as Mahomes and Kelsey, but they've got a physical defense. They're going to come at you, and they did, and they wore the Steelers down. There just wasn't anything left by season's end. Best answer I can give.
No, I agree with that. By the way, when we're talking about, not to change subject, when we're talking about potential weapons, Mr. CJ Jr. is asking questions as if he doesn't subscribe to our website. And I'm not talking about here. I'm talking about to our website. So I heard Davis. I'm assuming left without a contract. Man. CJ, no. I'm the one who broke the news, man. Like, yes, he left without a contract. Did he feel the physical? That part I don't know. I was just told that he left without a contract. Take that as however you want. That is his 3rd free agent visit in which he left without a contract, though. So also appropriate context.
And that also means that he's not healthy. He's not okay. This is for CJ. This is where you find our actual website. It's DKPittsburghSports.com. If you want to find our free app, you go to your App Store on Apple, or you go to Google Play on Android, and you type in just DK Pittsburgh Sports. and you'll see that it's all free. We're not trying to sell you anything, but that's where we actually cover the news. Chris Olnack asks, any insights into Rodgers' snaps under center versus shotgun or pistol? What did you see in that film today?
All three. I watched a lot of the game, and I intentionally watched a really, really bad game because I wanted to see the Jets at their worst. I watched their loss to the Vikings in London last year, and it was god awful. But no, all kinds of snaps under center, pistol, shotgun. He looks comfortable doing all that stuff. I mean, he's been in the league for 2 decades. That stuff, it's when it comes to the details of the quarterback position, like especially when it comes to taking the snap, selling play action, Rodgers is a tactician when it comes to that stuff, and he has been for a very, very long time. The only thing that's unorthodox for him is his footwork. They're not like most quarterbacks, but he's found a way to do that at a high level for a very, very, very long time. So he's not changing from that. That's just not every quarterback can get away with the kind of footwork that he has. That's when you know he just has one of those rare talents at when we talk about arm talent and everything.
Nick Clementi asks, with a couple of bucks dropped, can you give a brief overview of mandatory minicamp? If you mean the nature of it and what it is, you're going to be disappointed in all likelihood. I mean, you're still not going to hear, so-and-so looked really good. It's not going to happen. All eyes are obviously going to be on Rodgers and everything that he does. It's not just going to be, how did his throws look or arm talent as Cody's bringing up or anything like that. It's going to be, how does he interact? Is he smiling? Is he happy? Does the people around him look like they're trying to get along with him? Is he shunning them? Is he whatever? I see a scenario here where even though we're not permitted to describe what happens, and you're just going to get reams and reams and reams of stuff, even from the part of the practice that was it the first 20, 25 minutes. That's where we're allowed to photograph and videotape stuff. It's all just, it's going to be nothing but him. And I'm not saying that as if it's wrong. Our company's going to be doing the same thing. We're not idiots.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how that stuff works. Okay. But it's going to be really interesting in that regard. It is not going to be interesting to try to answer your question from any other standpoint, because it's just the last week of OTAs and it's mandatory. That's all it is. Just has a different name.
Yeah, the only differences, I would say, the two things to either watch for or at least take notice of during mandatory minicamp is this is the second time in the offseason the playbooks are installed. The first time is rookie minicamp. They try to throw as much, though Matt Williamson and I were doing the Southside beat, and the way I described it on that show was you are a college freshman and the professor comes in and puts down an entire book of 7 years worth of work towards your doctorate, and you have to absorb as much of that information as you possibly can in 3 days. They do that on purpose. They're trying to overwhelm them, see how much they can take in. Mandatory minicamp is the second time the playbooks are installed, and they do that on purpose because this is the first time the entire team is going to be there. The other thing to watch for is if people such as TJ Watt, who are in a potential contract negotiation thing, do they participate in just the individual stuff and then step off to the side during team stuff? If that's the case, is he going to hold in? Is that a preview for what's to come in training camp? That's another thing to watch for. But and obviously, if he doesn't even show up, that's an even bigger.
The one that is.
Jorge admonishes everybody. He does this a lot. Make sure that they hit the like button. We have currently 1,500 people in here. He says we only have 132 likes. I can't see the number of likes.
Yeah, we can see it.
But listen to Jorge, okay? You don't want him coming at you. You want to see Jorge in one of his fouler moods. Looking here for I had a question down here that I actually kind of liked here.
There were a few that I started too that I kind of liked.
Did you?
Yeah, let me see if I can find them.
David Schaefer, I just want to throw this in here. Says, I will root for the team regardless of who's playing QB. Who on earth would suggest that you wouldn't? This is like a total faux argument. Who would say, hey, You can't root for the Steelers or something like that. I just don't know where this stuff comes from.
Yeah.
You know,
this one from Bougie B.
Disagree on. Sorry, I just complete the thought here. Just if if somebody had the view that this guy would be the quarterback, somebody had the view that this guy would be the quarterback, and you have a third set of people, not many, but they would say that, well, I'd like to see Will Howard get the chance or whatever. It's just, it doesn't mean you don't root for the team or whatever. If your guy isn't, I don't even get where that comes from.
Yeah, I don't either. Bougie B asks, will they have more called plays over the middle, or is Tomlin telling them no? Actually, that's kind of part of what my chalk talk that I just put up was that Aaron Rodgers has plenty of experience running the same types of plays, especially out of play action, that Arthur Smith wants to run, that he learned when he was learning under Matt LaFleur in Tennessee. Rodgers ran that stuff for 4 years under LaFleur. Some Mike McCarthy stuff is in there too from all of his long years under McCarthy in Green Bay. There is way more potential to attack the middle of the field than there was last year, even pretty much ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired.
We never do stuff like this, but just for fun, Cody Silva asks, which Steelers players would you draft in fantasy? That's a Chris area. That's not a me area. I haven't been in a fantasy league in like 20 years of any kind in any sport. When I was, it was for hockey. When you're talking about the Steelers in fantasy, there's a different, it's not just saying who's the best player, right? There's certain points that you're looking for, certain types of guys.
Volume is a big thing.
I would take Zach Frazier.
Probably DK Metcalf is a pretty sure bet. I wouldn't take him very high. There are a lot of number one receivers, probably at least 10 to 15 number one receivers that I would take ahead of Metcalf. But if you're looking for a WR2 on your fantasy team, he'd be a good bet. Chris Boswell is.
I know your kicker. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a good kicker. The Steelers defense is typically pretty good in fantasy as well. Jaylen Warren, I think he might be a good later round pickup, but I'm concerned about Warren, not because of performance, but because of volume. Especially when it comes to running backs in general, it's like having Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery with the Lions. You know, either one of them can go off one Sunday, but you can't rely on it because they split carries. Derrick Henry's awesome because he gets all the carries in Baltimore. Saquon Barkley's awesome because he gets all the carries in Philadelphia. Running backs are hard to project when they aren't the feature back. So I'm going to say Metcalf, Chris Boswell, Steelers defense, but none of those guys are like first or second round types.
D. Elvis asks, has Aaron Rodgers played in an offense that is similar to Arthur Smith's? And the answer to that is heck yeah, because he was playing for Matt LaFleur.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Matt LaFleur, for those who don't know the history, Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator in Tennessee in 2018 when Arthur Smith was. Yeah, and then LaFleur came from the Shanahan school. Literally, Kyle Shanahan and his dad, Mike Shanahan, come straight from the Shanahan school of offense. Arthur Smith learned that from LaFleur in Tennessee, then adapted a lot of that stuff to his own playbook when he became offensive coordinator in Tennessee. So yes, he has played in a very, very similar offense to what Arthur Smith does.
Dwight Jefferson says before Mason Rudolph signed, he was told he'd be backing up Rodgers. I was the one that reported this, and that is not the way I worded it. But then Dwight goes on to say, so saying that the Steelers waited on Rodgers is bunk. I'm not sure what to do with this. Let me tell you, other than to tell you what actually happened. Mason was signed the day after Justin Fields signed with the Jets, and the Steelers realized they're out of quarterbacks. And that was not a comfortable position for them. They went to Mason, and they told him exactly what we've been reporting all along, which is that we're trying to get Rodgers. If we don't get him, you're going to be the starter. So they waited on Rodgers, which absolutely was not bunk. Probably the best answer that can be given to that with the way it was worded there. But yeah, I'm the one that reported that. You guys read our website. Yeah, read our stuff, man. It's it's there. Denny says Steelers players are fantasy killers. Wide receivers will have 10 catches 1 week, then 1 a week for the rest of the year. He's talking about George Pickens here.
Yeah. George Pickens was a little bit, and again, man, like it's hard to. It's hard. Like last year was hard just because the quarterback play was so. It's really been hard over the last few years when we talk about receivers because the quarterback play has been so inconsistent. Also, Pat Freiermuth is actually a pretty decent, like a TE2 in fantasy. I wouldn't mind having him as my second tight end. Like if my if my starting tight end is on a bye week and I need a tight end to slip in for a week, I don't mind putting Pat Freiermuth in there.
I like this one from Chris's best friend Butthole. It says,
hey,
how much do you think Aaron Rodgers signing will help Pat's numbers? That goes to something that somebody else brought up yesterday about throwing over the middle. And the answer is that there's no part of the field that Rodgers hasn't thrown to over the course of his career. The more compelling question is, and this will go to the video that you were watching just today, Chris, is he still doing it? Is he still targeting the middle of the field? Is he still looking there?
Yes, he is. He does look there. If anything, and I don't know the full context of it, but at least the film that I watched today, which included the entirety of one really, really terrible game, is there were a lot of times from the little bit that I've seen so far that he was either forcing things to people like Garrett Wilson, or he was just determined to like, I'm going here. Like, I want to get this guy involved for better or for worse. And we haven't really seen that from Rodgers has always been extremely careful with the football. That's been his calling card for a year. That's why he has the NFL's best interception percentage of all time, 1.4%. That's ridiculous over 20 NFL seasons. But he's also thrown 23 interceptions over his last 2 seasons he's played, when you can't even count that many in the 5 previous seasons total. Like there's a part that it's like he's become a little bit more reckless, and that part of his game concerns me. So I wonder if he's just being stubborn in terms of who he's trying to force the ball to, or if specifically with the Jets, it just was not a good fit. He's just trying to force the ball to guys that from the little bit that I saw, Garrett Wilson has to be a headache for quarterbacks in terms of the way he runs routes, because he runs routes differently than a lot of other receivers I've seen on film.
Good football player.
He's insanely talented, but some of his breaks and everything like that are not the way that you typically see receivers run breaks, like on a dig or an out or a corner. Like there was one where Rodgers definitely was like leading him down the field on a corner route where you've normally seen typically when the quarterback throws a corner route, they know exactly where it's supposed to go, and Wilson just cut it off almost like a deep out. And so it's like I can almost guarantee the receiver didn't run the route the right way. So it's just it's interesting. I want to dive more into that for sure.
Whoa, you heard a thunder back there?
I think you blocked it out, but it was so.
Whoa, man, we got some significant storm pouring onto our lovely Golden Triangle here. like end of the world storm. Crazy stuff. I'm looking for where did this Patrick Queen question go that I just saw? James Galloway has one for you while I try to find that. It says, Chris, can you break down the difference between Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers at the line? Before Chris does that, I want to throw in my 2 cents here. The thing that really hurt Russ, especially over his final few games, was that they were getting back there, the other guys. And Russ thought it was 10 years ago. And Russ thought he could escape them. And then Russ couldn't escape them.
Yeah.
And then it ended badly. Now, Rodgers, all you'd have to do is look at his average release time with the Jets last season to see that couldn't have been the case for him. It just couldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when we're talking about the line, I'm assuming we're going to also talk about what he sees pre-snap, what he does pre-snap. Yeah, I'm hearing it.
I would imagine you're hearing it.
I'm hearing it. It's going nuts. I know we were having some hard rain over here too. But no, like when we're talking like pre-snap stuff, Aaron Rodgers is probably I would say probably top 5 all time in terms of controlling things at the line of scrimmage. Nobody beats Peyton.
Hey, you and your top 5 on Rodgers.
Okay. But nobody beats Peyton Manning when it comes to that.
I was going to say
Peyton Manning was the best all time in terms of getting everything set. But Rodgers does a lot of communication, hand signals, hard cadences. He's very, very known for his cadence and hard counts and everything like he does a lot before the snap. And again, the longer and longer he's been in the league, the more and more he sees and the more he knows what to check into, out of, so on and so forth. He's up there when it comes to some of the best quarterbacks, when it comes to getting the offense ready to go. Communication, guys have to be on the same page, especially when you start checking in and out of stuff. And then plus when you're talking about even after the snap, he's not going to try to be Superman all the time like Russell Wilson. Because when Russell Wilson was at the height of his powers, he could do that stuff. He could go out and be Superman on the outside because he was fast and athletic enough to do it. He's not anymore.
And throw across his body and everything. Yeah. But it does come for everybody. You know, the whole father time thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's something that I don't think Russ is necessarily going to pick up on. Yeah. I think he's in some kind of denial there. We'll see whether or not that happens.
His game
with the Giants this year.
His game was never meant to age well. It just never was. Ben had to
adjust. I mean, you can adjust. You can learn from it. You can become a different type of quarterback. We saw that with Ben Roethlisberger. Is that what you were about to say?
Yeah. Ben had to do that. Ben couldn't be the gunslinger that just kept extending all the time, and he had to become a better pocket quarterback. But the great thing about Ben was he was 6'5" and 240 pounds. He could stay in the pocket and make plays from there. And as he continued to learn the game and see everything the defenses did over the course of his career, he became a lot in a very similar way. He could see things before the snap. He could be like, hey, we're about to run into a buzzsaw here if we go through the play. Let me check out of it, go to something else. And he became a better quarterback in that regard. It wasn't until he blew his arm out that, everything changed for him. But Russell Wilson's game was never meant to age that way because of his size. And no.
Matthew says, I'm surprised Mason Rudolph doesn't get discouraged by the way the Steelers treat him, but it's business, I guess. Listen, I'm going to tell you this as the guy that talked to him the day he signed this contract. He knew exactly what he was entering.
Mm-hmm.
Omar Khan did not mislead him in any way, shape, or form. He knew exactly what the scenarios were. And he knew exactly how likely it was, in one degree or the other, that he would come here and be the starter. He also knew that last season didn't go well for him in large part, whether it was because of the Titans or whatever. If he thought so much of himself, let me put it another way here. This isn't somebody who lacks humility, okay? If he thought so much of himself, he never signs a 2-year, what is it, $8 million, $10 million? What did he get?
2 years, $8 million.
2 and 8.
Yeah.
You don't sign that if you think you're God's gift to quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, let's keep this real. All right. He knew. Don't weep for him. Okay. He is preparing for exactly what's ahead.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a haunted house show or something. Like I say something like Mason Rudolph and the thunder goes.
That's fun.
I found the question that I was looking for here. It's under the stars, and it comes from our friend Jason Williams. He says, "Greetings, fam. What do you look forward to in year 2 in Pittsburgh? Anyway, with Patrick Queen." And I'm going to seize this opportunity to, instead of telling you what we think, I'm going to tell you what actually Mr. Queen thinks in a conversation that he and I had the other day at OTAs.
Can you imagine how different this season will be for you without having to go through the whole green dot thing again?
Oh, man.
You and I talked about it all last season. Like, yeah, but I'm still like, and I remember you in Las Vegas telling me, like, I'm still working on it and whatever. But now you've been here.
Yeah, it's like second nature now. I mean, I freaking put my helmet on and I just hear him talking. I'm like, okay, cool, we back to it. So I think that whole year to get used to a new defense, get used to being a signal caller, just all that stuff, I think that's out the window now. I think it's just more time for me to show up every single down, every single game. I think all that stuff's in the past, no more excuses. I just got to be about it.
Just play football.
Yeah, just play football. It's that simple.
That's where he is, Chris.
Yep.
He feels, and this matters a lot, he feels and is saying that the green dot thing is really not going to be an issue for him anymore. And the reason that I say that it means something coming from him is we heard a lot last season about when it did hold things back.
Yeah, he we talked about this. I want to say either earlier this week or last week when James Farrior first came to the Steelers, and that first year, wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't quite, he hadn't become the James Farrior that Steelers fans adore now. And that wasn't until the second year with the team. You're not having to focus so much. It's almost like a rookie when they come into the NFL. There's so much thinking that has to go on, and you can't just default to just play. Queen will be a lot more of the just play now because nothing's new now. Of course, there's always new wrinkles and different things that they're going to try to do. You're not just going to repeat, use the same old playbook that you had last year. You're going to add some new stuff to try to defend the run better, so on and so forth. But in terms of the terminology, the language of the defense, communicating with every other, with all the teammates and everything, it's going to be a lot more of just play and not so much thinking this time around.
Lots of remarks here about the storm and where it's passing through as people are watching this program in the area. It seems like it. I say that
keeps coming.
It just passed, and then boom! Eric says, "Will Mike Tomlin's trust in Aaron Rodgers be equal to Tomlin's trust in Big Ben?" That's not even remotely possible. Listen to what you're saying, Eric. Ben was with him for the lion's share of 2 decades.
Yeah,
Rodgers is showing up on Tuesday. I mean, this is a very, very different time frame, element, and everything else. However, if you're asking that in another way, and I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but if you're asking that in the sense that is Tomlin going to carry himself around Rodgers the way he did around Ben, my guess is yes.
That's going to be similar.
Because we saw that with Russ.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Tomlin just when he has that veteran quarterback, he'll defer, and he will happily defer to keep making the same point I've been making for months now, which is that he doesn't want to be bothered with that position. He really doesn't. If he has somebody else come in and say, "Hey, listen, guys, I'm here now. It's my job. I'm here to do this. This is how it's going to be," he'd be the happiest guy in the world. I really believe that, Chris.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is different when you're talking about, when they drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round, and it became clear that he wasn't just going to be able to come in and just take a big step right away and then take another step, and it was going to take some serious development. You could kind of see, obviously they were, by the time year 2 came to an end, they were already of the opinion of, okay, we need to bring another guy in to kind of light a fire under Kenny, because we didn't see any true jump from year 1 to year 2.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to light a fire under him. And obviously we know how that went down now. So I think until they do draft who they believe will be their franchise quarterback, which could be as early as next year, as we've been talking about the long-term plan, until then, it makes a lot of sense for Tomlin to try to go to a veteran, and he's now had access to 2 different veterans. One of them will at least get consideration for the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he'll definitely make it, but he'll be considered and probably be a finalist several times. But then the other one's going to be a first ballot, no doubt. I think that's probably the way he would prefer to handle it until they can draft like their next guy, their next franchise quarterback. And then at that point, you have to do that. You can't just keep doing these 1-year fixes.
Chev says, when will you have the opportunity to speak with Rodgers? That's whenever they decide, the Steelers do, to have their introductory press conference. It was funny. Chris and I were talking on the phone last night about exactly that thing, because Tuesday is mini camp, and I don't want to bore everybody with details here, but the place where the Steelers would normally do a press conference is currently unavailable due to some stuff that they have going on over at the practice facility, and that's supposed to bleed into next week, which means I don't know that they have a place to do it. And if they have all of us just surround him on the grass,
that's going to be tough.
That's going to be tough, because you're TV cameras, hitting each other in the back of the head and everything. It's not going to be easy. There is one solution, and that's to clean out the offensive line room like they do for the draft, which used to be the media room
right
in the building. But then the offensive linemen are using it because there's an active camp.
Yeah.
So good luck on that one, Bert. Laughing over there. But that's the goal. Not the goal. That's my expectation, is that we'll get him either they have a separate press conference. One thing they could do, Chris, would be totally reasonable. Take him to Heinz Field or to Acrisure.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, you might have to. Honestly, like if it's Monday and you're like, okay, we want to do the press conference Monday. Like, okay, we can't really use the South Side right now, so we're just gonna do it at the stadium. I mean, it's not that much further for people like me who live in a whole other county. But remember, I do live in Westmoreland.
Nah, it's enough out of you. Stanton Smith says, DK, from a reporter's standpoint, are you excited to interact with Rodgers? I've mentioned this on a show about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I get excited by famous musicians that I meet.
Yeah.
I get excited by, go ahead and laugh at me. I don't care. By famous like comic book artists or people like that. I'm with athletes. It's a job. And once you've gotten to know, and in my case, even beyond his playing days and everything else, Mario Lemieux, I'm sorry, it's all on a lower level after that. So excited to interact with somebody, to write columns about, to create video content about, or whatever it is, about somebody who comes with his Rodgers. I mean, in this case, so the natural storylines, listen, can I just be honest with you? I want to cover a team that doesn't suck. Okay. This is where I am right now.
Yeah.
And I talk about this with the boss on a regular basis, because she sees me come back from these baseball games like, what was I even doing over there? Okay. The hockey team is in a clear, no matter how they want to label it, reload, rebuild, or whatever, they're in a youth phase. Okay.
Yep.
I like a lot of what they're doing. I like the direction. I like the plan that the Penguins have, but they're not about to win. Okay. Which reduces your impact on games. I've always felt that my strength as a writer, as a columnist, has been game coverage. But if the games don't mean anything, that's rough. So I have always wanted 2025 to be a meaningful season for the Steelers. Okay. My sense before all of this, and my sense to this date, actually, I should say, is that they would have had a better chance of doing that with a healthy, stable, younger quarterback than they will with the one they've got. But they've got the one that they've got. But that's actually our fire alarm here. I'm going to hit mute, Chris, and you take that one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think now. I was reading a whole bunch of comments. I'm trying to think because I mean I agree with a lot of what you said. Man, seriously, what's a fire alarm going off for? That's interesting.
Above here is a completely occupied apartment complex in Market Square. So so if somebody like overcooks something, the fire alarm goes off through the entire complex here, this entire block of Fifth Avenue downtown.
Oh yeah, I mean, so 2025 was always going to be a difficult season for the Steelers to do anything meaningful at the quarterback position in terms of long-term success. Because even if it was Justin Fields, even if they would have had their way, which their number one priority was Justin Fields, Oh, that's funny. Denny says the takes were just too hot today, and DK is now laughing. You just can't hear because of the mute button. That's actually really funny. But
I don't smoke, Dave.
Even if the Steelers would have gotten their way with Justin Fields, they viewed him as a 1 or 2 year bridge guy with high upside. Maybe he turns into the guy, but there was just no anointing anybody to be the long-term option. And so when you're talking about 2025 success, you're going to have to do it with pretty much a very similar roster to what you had last season and shore up as much as you possibly can. And at the quarterback position, that was going to have to be something they had to get better at. It didn't work with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And they believe now, obviously, by bringing in Aaron Rodgers, that Aaron Rodgers is a better option for that. I think they can be a good football team with Aaron Rodgers. The rest of the roster is pretty good. That defense, when it's playing at its best, is pretty good. Let's not just only remember the 5 games at the end of last year. Let's also remember the 13 that they played prior to that. This is still a pretty good defense with more upside now. Yeah, and Matt says the bottom line is if our line can gel, the rest of the offense can flourish. And that's the other thing I do want to take into account. I want to put in through the whole Aaron Rodgers lens here. I don't think I don't remember this off the top of my head, but I don't think a team threw the ball more last year than the New York Jets. That is asking a lot of a 40 to 41-year-old quarterback to be the guy who's going to carry you to success. That is pretty much saying, hey, Aaron, we need you to channel yourself from 10 years ago and be our savior. The Steelers are not doing that with Aaron Rodgers. They are not asking him to come in and say, hey, we're revamping everything. We're now going to throw the ball 40 to 50 times a game. We need you to be Aaron bleeping Rodgers again. No, they're still going to try to run the football. They're still going to try to use play action off of that if they can run the ball. And then Rodgers can just execute the system off of that. And he knows how to do that. So, are we done? Uh-oh. All right, I think we got to go, everyone. Really appreciate you tuning in to Double Shot.
This is what's happening here. We have to end the show, guys. We'll be back on Monday. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.